Well, g'day, Adam. So you're looking pretty good compared to what you should look like with Carnival time, right? It's in the thick of it. So how's Brazil for you? How's Recife?
Yeah, it's like nowhere else we've been before so far on this trip, and like nowhere else I've been before ever. Really, it's a huge city, about 1.5 million people, um, crammed full of high-rise apartments and office buildings, um, and yeah, we're here during Carnival, so it's sort of 24 hours a day party time, and pretty incredible for somebody that lives in a very quiet rural part of North England.
Okay, so that's good. All right, we haven't spoken really since Cape Town. So let's just go back to the start in Cape Town and just give us just a short brief on Cape Town to St. Helena, how you took to that.
Yeah, it was. I actually really enjoyed that passage. It was really nice, calm seas for the first 4 or 5 days, which we haven't really had at all. So that was quite different. You could get the boat to go along quite nicely in fairly light winds, so that was lovely. And then winds picked up and sea state picked up, but we had a little bit of apparent wind. The sea state wasn't too bad. It was very straightforward passage in terms of navigation, maybe a little bit of routing around currents. Um, I was nearer the front than the back of the fleet, and I think we got better winds at the front. Seems to have been a trend all the way around. The trade seemed to ease off towards the back of the fleet. I don't know whether that's a trade winds thing or just a phenomenon that we've been a little bit unlucky with for those at the back. But it's been yeah, it was a good passage.
Yeah.
Um, Another night arrival for me in St Helena, which is pretty imposing. It's just this massive rock in the middle of the South Atlantic, um, anchored or tied up on the moorings that St Helena had been kind enough to put out for us, and it was pretty straightforward.
Yeah, okay. And what's your strongest memory from your time at St. Helena? How would you describe that?
Well, I guess being on British soil for the first time since
Oh, yeah.
December 24 was quite nice. I think the strongest memory is it was just a really friendly environment, almost like a sort of quiet southeast coast UK town. A lot of people in their mid to late life, not a lot of young people. Pace of life was very slow. I met the commissioner, and he talked to me a little bit about the island and the culture. The accent was extraordinary. It was like sort of an 18th century form of Old English British accent, which was interesting. Um, and I had Kerry there, my wife there, so that was nice. She'd always wanted to go to St Helena, so we saw a lot of the island, and enjoyed the time there. It was great.
Did anyone talk about Napoleon much?
Yeah, there was a lot of Napoleon chat. We went to see his house where he was exiled. Yeah, I mean, I think it was more of a thing for us than the islanders. But yeah, fair bit of talk about Napoleon in the first few days that we were there.
Yeah. Did you do the ladder? Did you climb up the top or you went by car?
No, I don't do heights, Don. I think if I tried, I would have got quarter of the way up, and then somebody would have had to help me down. So,
Oh, really?
um, I, yeah, I'm terrible with Renault and I have got exactly the same problem. We can't do heights. Have dreams about falling quite regularly. I have done all my life, and it's something that I just keep away from.
That's amazing, eh? There's an English guy, a friend of mine, a guy called David Scott Cowper, right? Quite famous. He's done
I know David.
5 times.
Yeah,
Okay. He was going to join the GGR, and it didn't happen. But I've known him for since the what mid '80s or something, and 6 times, 5 times around the world, all this sort of stuff, blah blah blah. he's never done a survival course because he can't put his head underwater. He
Oh,
doesn't swim.
really?
He just doesn't do water. And I was like, whoa. And there you go. You don't do heights. So anyway, that's
Yeah.
cool. All right. So tell me two things about the journey from St. Helena to Recife. One's the voyage itself, but the other one is just try and explain your headspace. We spoke about all that sort of stuff in Cape Town. And it was a great relief. But did you sort of find it really nice, that you could enjoy the ocean experience because a lot of the pressure's off, Like, did it change the sailing at all?
Yeah, I would say completely yes on the journey to St. Helena. But I had a really bad trip from St. Helena to Recife. I got into a really bad headspace. I don't know why. I can only put it down to just not preparing properly. I think I'd sort of dismissed it at being just a couple of weeks and we're nearly there. And I found the consistent downwind sailing with no apparent wind and a difficult sea state difficult. I found the heat really difficult. I found my frustrations were coming almost uncontrollable frustrations due to a slow boat speed, which I still can't quite work out why, but I was losing tons of ground to my nearest rivals. So I got into a bit of a muddle, if I'm honest, Don. Didn't enjoy it, and was struggling, and very, very pleased to see mainland South Africa when I got here, South America rather, when I got here.
Yeah. Do you think that was partly because you feel as if it's a job now, like the fun's over because you got to Cape Town? It's very interesting. I didn't expect that answer, by the way. It was just a throwaway one, and now I'm just interested in investigating that and trying
Yeah,
to understand if it's something that may have affected others as well. They haven't spoken about, because it is getting to Cape Town was a big high, but now
yes.
it's like, oh, we just got to finish this thing.
Yes, I think you're right. I think there was so much adrenaline and mental preparation and concern about the journey from Mauritius to Cape Town, and and it was a pretty tough leg at the end of the day.
Yeah,
And I think maybe the adrenaline had just dropped a bit. It was a very straightforward passage on the map. It was just go from A to B, stick on the rum line, don't need to worry about currents, no storms coming. And the 2 weeks just felt like 2 years. I mean, every hour was dragging. I was just really struggling like I'd never done before. And I'm not quite sure I can explain it other than that. You sort of have all your methods as to how to pop you out of a bad headspace into a good one, and I couldn't get them to work, and um, I just wanted the whole thing to be over. I was not far away from you know sort of calling for excuse me, calling for help almost. I'm not quite sure who I was going to call, but
yeah.
I was if there'd been an option to get off my boat. I certainly hope I wouldn't have done it, but I was feeling that way.
Yeah. Do you think it was? And did that? How did that manifest itself practically? I mean, were you bored? Were you just on your bunk, sort of staring into space, or you couldn't read, or the normal forms of entertainment? Did they all stop, and you were just staring at the horizon? You know?
Yeah, they sort of did, and there's certain amount of time I can get in the cockpit and hand steer and try to keep myself busy that way. But there's a lot of times where it's just too hot, and I just found myself sitting and staring at the other side of the boat. It was difficult to self motivate,
Yeah.
and I think maybe these are the sort of great highs and lows of solo sailing that you can look back on it and. But at the time, it was pretty awful, I have to say.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. Very interesting, and I mean it's probably a separate subject, but you think a bit of that might have been also not being able to think about what's next after it's all over and finished, or that's that whole mix.
Yeah, it didn't. There was no element of any sort of self patting on the back saying, tell yourself that you've nearly sailed all the way around the world. This has been it just was, I just need to keep going hour by hour. If I don't keep going, something bad's going to happen. I just have to keep pushing through. And there was nothing I could do to lift myself. And I found I was very down for the first 4 or 5 days in Recife. I think I was probably slightly exhausted with heat. Probably my eating and drinking had suffered a little bit. And I think if you ask friends here, they would tell you I look pretty forlorn for the first few days. I feel so much better now, and strong and ready to do the next passage. But it was a real struggle.
Yeah, well, that's amazing. Thanks for sharing all that. That's quite something. I mean, it's what we say. We all make it look pretty easy, in lots of different ways, even the sailing side and all that sort of stuff. But there's always the backstory and the other bits. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think that's very interesting for a lot of people. Okay, well, good to hear you're upbeat for the next leg. What are you thinking about that tactically, like sailing wise? Because there's a few challenges and it's going to be different. The weather's going to be on the beam, things like that. What's your take on the next leg?
Well, I've done as much as I can to the boat to try and make some small changes just to try and increase my hull speed. So that, I'm if I was able just to put in a box the race aspect and just say enjoy the sailing, life would probably be a lot easier for me. But I can't do that, and I do keep pushing as hard as I can. So I've done a bit of that. I think for me it's going to be a much more interesting passage because there is so much more to do and to think about. We've got the first third of it, which is getting through light winds and getting into what then should be about a 1,300 mile 2 knot current in our favor. Shouldn't be much commercial shipping, but there could well be um, quite a lot of fishing vessels, possibly unlit vessels. So just a lot more to be aware of than the previous two passages that we've had. Um, we've heard of two friends that have had to get off their boats, one for one reason or another, one because of an illness, a solo sailor, and another because of hitting a reef in these waters. So it's really focused our minds to just to remind ourselves it's not over till the fat lady sings. So there's still a lot of work to do,
Yeah,
and I'm really looking forward to this next 2 or 3 weeks.
yeah, absolutely. If we're there, usually, not always, but sometimes we have a debrief with everyone. Have you had a session with a lot of the other entrants, talking about your last couple of legs and stuff, and the next leg, or you haven't seen most of them? They've all buggered off.
No, there's a I've spoken to quite a few people, and I think we all share most things now. So I think everybody's, particularly with the little shock of friends that have come into trouble recently, that we're all taking it seriously. Nobody is thinking about anything else other than how to keep safe for the next 2,300 miles. There's still quite a lot to play for in the race. Um, I think we're all on the same page. I'm I as well as I think everybody else much prefers these mass restarts where we can keep in VHF contact with people and see people on AIS, and that just feels like you're part of the fleet rather than just completely on your own. So um, there's still, I tend not to really do things in any great detail until 2 3 days before because of the
Yeah,
accuracy of the weather. But
yeah.
we're all looking forward to it and taking it very seriously.
Yeah, well, if it makes any difference, I stumbled across one of your videos building your boat the other day, and it made me realise again how far you've all gone. I forget what you
Yeah,
were saying, but it was very funny to look at you back then. You looked like a different person and building your boat. And so, maybe that'll all come home on this leg, where it's the last one and you're finally going to be there and there's lots of different challenges. So it's all kind of interesting. Anyway.
yeah, yeah.
So the boat's for sale. And
Yes.
what's the plan? You know, you're going to leave the boat there, or you're going to ship it back, or sail it back, or you know, what's happening?
It's booked onto a carrier, so it'll get lifted up and just sat on a cradle on a transport boat in St John's, Antigua. That's at the end of March, early April. It'll come
Yeah,
back to Southampton, and then it'll be in Southampton or back at my home port of Amble in Northumberland, and for sale from there.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I didn't want to leave it in Antigua, and I want to get it back home.
Yeah, it'd be quite fun to just go sailing again. People won't believe it. They say, "What? That's the boat you sailed around?" But
Yeah,
anyway, yeah, I think
yes,
there's going to be quite a bit of that. You know, when you look at the big picture of where you've been and what's happened,
yeah,
yeah, it's going to be quite fun. All right, so the boat's good. Your sails are going to make the distance and all that stuff.
yeah. I'm pretty hopeful. I've got a spare main should I need it, but actually, I didn't use my main very much at all from Cape Town. Um, and little bit of fingers crossed with the spinnakers, but should be fine.
Yeah, you're still eating sardines, or you're going to get a good food selection out of Brazil.
No, the sardines and me fell out back in Indian Ocean. Yeah,
Oh, it'll come
we
back.
don't talk about sardines anymore. Tuna's
Okay.
still okay.
How do you manage your sleep patterns, by the way? You know, like generally speaking, you know, we've spoken about it before. I'm just interested, or we could have spoken about it probably in Fiji, but I'm just interested if it's changing and, you know, whether you're just shooting from the hip or whether you got a routine.
I try and have a routine so that I eat my last food at dusk, and I try and then sleep when it gets dark. Um, and I normally get, say, 3 hours, maybe 4 hours, sometime between 7 in the evening and 4 in the morning. Um, I never sleep for more than about an hour, sometimes an hour and a half.
Yeah,
Um, I find it a little bit easier to do stuff and be around and active at night for obvious reasons, just for the heat. I don't think it's difficult to know whether you've got enough sleep or not because it's a sort of little bit of a gradual thing. At the beginning of the passage, I'm sure you're all rested, but as the time goes on, sleep deprivation just has a habit of just crawling up quietly. And then I think I realized not until I arrived here that I was pretty exhausted,
yeah,
and therefore must have had a problem with lack of sleep in the last bit of that passage from
yeah.
St Helena.
Okay. Did Kerry come into Recife? Or she's
No,
back in?
she's no, she's back, so she'll come and meet me as well as a lot of the rest of my family in Antigua.
Yeah, okay. Party time. So that's a big incentive to get there in a hurry, you know. But
Yeah,
anyway,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah. All right. Well, listen, that's great. That's a really interesting story there. So appreciate that. So
Okay.
anything else you want to, you know, like how's the Ella Foundation going and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, it's going great. I've got a chat with Jane tomorrow, and we're going to just try and push a bit of publicity for the next 3 weeks. Um, I understand that these fundraisings do tend to get a little bit of an extra boost at the end of the event. So I'm really hopeful that we can keep pushing and keep the money coming in. But it's been going well, and lots more hope. And I know I've got quite a few pledges that have said they'll come in once I get to Antigua.
Yeah, yeah, fair enough. We're going to get you to call in while we're changing the time of the daily tracker update, and we're going to get answers to call in at least once during this leg as well, maybe even
Okay.
twice. Leave it anyway. Let's see how we go. Okay, well that's really good. So we'll look forward to seeing you arrive safely in Antigua. Touch wood, you know that'll be fun.
Perfect.
Hard to believe, eh? Every time I say it, I say, "Cheapers, we're going to be in Antigua," and it's like, what? I'm just. It's funny. I'm doing some stuff. You know, I needed to find some pictures of Antigua, and it just brings it so back, and it just is crazy. So anyway, well done.
Yeah. Okay.
Enjoy the
Thanks,
ride.
Don.
We'll see you in Antigua, eh?
Okay. Cheers. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. See you later. Okay, we've stopped recording now, but yeah, no, that's really interesting.